let's introduce the folks to this brand new podcast that
Yeah.
we're excited about, which
Okay.
we have officially named Yin and Yang Healing,
Yeah.
exploring beyond the physical.
Yay. I love going beyond the physical. That's where everything is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like it's like a huge piece that a lot of people don't address, and they're
Oh yeah.
so focused on just the physical, and like obviously there is a place for that, but when you go beyond the physical, the like level of healing is insane. and
So I know it's so much more.
and
Like
like
it's
yeah, I'm excited for us to share our stories about that.
me too. Because I always say I'm like, people need to know about this. Like people don't know about it. And I feel like that's a disservice like to them. That's why like when I work at the health food store, I always tell people, I'm like, just so you know, like even if they're totally like not into this at all and I can like tell it, I'll still like put the seed in there. I'm like, just so you know, this could be like emotional and this is how it could be emotional. And like some
Yeah,
people are like, yeah, but like totally not ready. And then some people are just like full on in denial. They're like, no, I'm pretty sure I just have digestive issues. And I'm like, okay, sure.
yeah.
You're
There's
actually just
always
not
like two
digesting
kinds
what's
of
in your
people.
life. Yeah.
There's always those two kinds of people, like one that's just like okay, and the other one that's like you're like, yeah, did you ever think about that kind of thing? I guess technically there's like three type of people. Then there's like the third person who's like, oh my god, it totally is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I
But
actually
I
get a lot of those people, which is actually surprising. Like I actually don't get a lot of the people in denial. Like it's very rare when I mention it to people.
Yeah, I
So that
guess like when you're looking into like alternative health, that you tend to be a little more open-minded, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And like I do like working with people who are kind of like skeptical,
Me too.
because I feel
Okay.
like those are the people who end up having like some of the biggest releases, and you're just like, "Okay, bro, like, you had something."
I know. Yeah, when people have to tell me they're nervous or they're like skeptical, I'm like, that's okay. I love that. Like I actually love that you're in that space because it makes it easier for me. Oh, you know what the worst is though, is when people come and they're like, yeah, like I'm already like all good. Like I don't even know why I'm here. And I'm like, okay, well, like I'm not a psychic, so I'm not sure like what you thought. So if you want to like work through something, like you gotta let me know what it is. Like
Yeah,
and
you
then
just
people are
came
like,
here for
I'm
no
like
reason.
perfect. I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, like how did you like I don't actually know your full story. Like how did you get into healing and like this kind of healing?
Yeah, it's kind of like longish story, but I'll try and like make it quick. Um, so I don't know. Oh, I feel like you gotta like start it back from like the beginning because like
Tell us the story.
there's really like a beginning on it. And like when I was a kid, I was always teased for like being fat and like I just didn't always have like a lot of friends and like I just always felt like so insecure and an outsider and just even like within my own family, like I just always felt like the black sheep kind of like I was always like just didn't feel like accepted. And then like as I got older, I really didn't like that. And I like the girls would make fun of me like in gym class and stuff like that. And so I hated that. So like when I got out of high school, I started working out a lot. And so that's kind of like how my journey in like health started because I was like, and then it's interesting how that kind of plays in later into like the sit stuff. But so I was like working out like a lot, just really into like health and wellness and like taking care of your body and like being really healthy. And like part of it was like there was a part that wanted to like prove those people wrong. But like I'm not that fat girl. I'm not who you say I am. Like I'm my own, like I'm gonna be who I'm gonna be, not who you say I am. And so it kind of like all started there. And then yeah, I just worked a bunch of different jobs, just getting to like know myself and I go to school right away. Which was again like a thing in my family that was kind of like, oh, if you don't go to school now, like you'll never go to school. And I was like, that's not true. Like that's actually not true. And then I did end up going back to school because I'd done these jobs. I hated it. I was like a safety officer in construction. I hated that job. I could only do it for a year. I hated it so much. And then I for that same company, I was like a receptionist. I hated that too. I hated it. I felt like I was stuck in a prison and were like watching me all the time and judging me and commenting on everything I was doing. I was like, hey, this is like a no. So then I went back to school. And I remember getting a job at a restaurant, like as a prep cook. And I did that job and I'm like going back to school. So like I don't have a job anymore. I'm like going back to school, like something totally new. I'm like freaking out. So I go to have this job. I hated it. I was like, I don't want to be a prep cook. Like this is so horrible. I just no. I gave my notice like right away. I was like, this is my first and last day. Like, thanks, but no thanks. And then I had like my favorite health food store that I always went to. Because at this time, like I'm still like working out and like whatever. And so I go to my health food store, and the guy that was working, I was just kind of telling him my woes. He's like, how's your day going? Like, how are things? And I was like, not that great. I was like, I'm going back to school and like I don't have a job, and I thought I had a job, and like now I don't. I hated it, and like I don't know what to do. And I think he knew me because I had been shopping at that one. I was pretty loyal to that one store. But turns out he was the owner. And then he was like, well, like I'm hiring, like, do you want a job? And I was like, yeah, I didn't want a job.
Synchronicity.
I know. So then so I got this job, this health food store. And then throughout my schooling, which I never actually graduated from McEwen, but through my schooling, I actually just stayed in that health industry the whole time. So I worked for him for a while, and then I worked at other health food stores. And then I ended up leaving like school. Like I took a break at that time because I got a really great position as like a manager at a health food store. So I just took a break from that, and it was so great, and I loved it and everything. And then kind of around that time when I like took that break from school, I was just like going through a lot and just trying to like unravel like my trauma, trying to like make sense of it. Because there was a particular trauma that I just always remember saying to myself in my head, like, you're never going to share it to anyone. You're just going to like push it down. Like it wasn't that bad. Other people have way worse trauma. Like you can't ever share that, because that would just be bad if you shared it. Like, who are you to share something that happened to you that really isn't like on the scale of like traumatic, but wasn't that bad? So like always kind
Yeah.
of push it down. And then yeah, just like all the friends that I had like met and the people I'd met at that time, it was just kind of like wild. And then I had a friend who she, like, by the grace of God, honestly, she had like met this practitioner from the building that she worked in who did EPT, emotional polarity technique, which
Oh,
is
nice.
pretty similar to sit, just like a different structure. And then my friend was like, this is so amazing and profound. She's like, you like need to go to this session. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And she's like, yeah, she does like muscle testing. And I was like, okay, like for sure. So I had like so much judgment on it, which is so funny now. And I had worked in the health food store for a long time. I always seen people would like hold products up to themselves and like go for a back like muscle test. Like, so it wasn't like totally foreign to me. I just didn't like know how it worked, and I judged it.
Mm-hmm.
But then and it was like $110 at that time. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like if I can afford that. And because I wasn't working at that time. And then she was like, it's so profound. I will pay for you to go. Like I will literally
What?
pay for you to go to this healing because like you need it. Because I was feeling like really stuck. I was doing all this personal development and everything. And just like really expanding, but I was stuck and I could feel it, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And I was like, whoa, okay, like if it's so profound that you'll pay for it, like as my friend, I'll go. So I
Yeah.
went to it, and then it just like completely changed my whole life. Just like one session, I was like, holy shit. And like in it, I found out I was holding emotions for someone else. And that just changed my whole, it just everything clicked for me because I was like, wow, like that's not my problem. And it never, all the ways I felt stuck, it didn't make sense. Like it didn't feel like it was me. So then it finally all like made sense. After one session, the next session I booked, I asked her straight away, I was like, how do I learn how to do what you do? Because this just resonates so strong with me. And like I need to do this. Like I need to do this to like help people. And that was the time where I was kind of like teetering of like whether or not I was gonna like go back to school. I was upgrading my chemistry 30 from like high school to get into certain programs so I could be a naturopath. And
Oh,
then
nice.
yeah, but it all just kind of like fell away because then by the time I would have to like do all of that because I didn't know what I was doing when I first went to school, which I actually went to school initially to become a psychologist. So it's funny that
Wow.
Now I'm like
Now
back
you're
here like
doing
full
sit.
circle, and now I'm doing like sit, which is like to me like better than any counseling I've ever had for like those really
Yeah,
persistent like issues.
for sure. Like I definitely agree with that. Like I personally have gone to a bunch of different counselors and even a couple therapists, and like now experiencing it, I'm just like, these people have they have what is it, like a degree or a master's that you need for it, and I'm just like you're judging me so hard. But versus when you go to a subconscious imprinting technique practitioner, it's like no judgment. You can like fully just like express yourself without fear of being like, you need to do this and you need to do that and fucking all these shootings on you.
Yeah,
And
because
I
I
will
feel like
never
most,
go to a traditional therapist again now because of
yeah.
that.
So I have two thoughts on that. One, I think that a lot of people, like maybe not everyone, but a lot of people who do get the sit practitioner, because they're trying to like heal themselves. Like they want to help other people heal, but they have their own stuff that they're trying to like work through. And so they get it. It's like the judgment, I feel like can't be there because like they're in it. You know what I mean? Like they're
Right.
in it, in the healing.
Mhm.
And then two, so like I had a coworker who had like a pretty tragic event like happen. Like there's a fire involved, and she was telling me that she's been like going to counseling because she just really needs someone to talk to, and she's not getting like that support in the personal life. And
Mhm.
and so the counseling has been like really, really helpful for her. And so it's not to like discount like conventional counseling, because I definitely think it has its place, like especially if you just need if you need that, you need to just talk. You need to just
Yeah.
like vent out all your stuff and have someone just like hold space for you and hear you. I think that really has a space. But then when you're if you're feeling like really stuck, or you've got chronic pain, or you've got like anxiety and you don't know where it's like coming from, and you're like really, really stuck and nothing seems to help, I find that that's where like sit is like amazing, because it really gets to the root of like the issue,
Mhm.
like the deeper like issue.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense. Like when if I think about like, let's say for example, and we're going to talk about your specialty, which is relationships. But like if I think about like my relationship, for example, like I don't have a lot of friends nearby that I can just like go and talk about my shit that's going on. And so yeah, I could see how like a counselor would be good for that kind of thing. And I
Mhm.
guess like I definitely do have judgments though about it because I have gone to so many that are just so ill informed on
Yeah,
like
me too.
how they should proceed with that. So I guess like with that in mind is just like when like just be intentional of like why you're going to that and like what you
Yeah,
want from them. Because I think now if I were to seek out someone again, I would specifically say to them, like, I just need to talk to you. Like, I just need someone to listen, basically. Because before I was going like with more of like the intention of like, I need you to like help me fix this,
right.
which was not helpful because they weren't like it's like you said, they probably didn't go through therapy themselves to become certified, whereas like sit practitioners like have to go through literally so many sessions of sit to like become certified that it's
Yeah.
like right, you can't be as judgmental because you know what it feels like going through that process. But um like beyond sit, like we could spend a whole like 3 hours probably talking about sit, whereas
Probably,
like
yeah.
people could just go to like healers podcast and like listen to more about that. But I want to talk more about like what inspired you to get into like the relationship niche.
Okay, yeah. Wait, do you want to put that on a hold for a second? I'm curious first on how you like how you got into this,
Oh
into
yeah.
your personality, into of healing and sleep and everything.
Well, my story is pretty like similar in some senses that I can relate to you with like always feeling like the black sheep. It's like even now as like a grown person, I still feel like a black sheep in my family. Like my family does not get me. They don't get me because I'm
Yeah.
just like out there like doing like not doing what society says, what the shoulds that you should do. I'm
Right.
like doing what I feel like I want to do. And like just one very specific example is like, it's like I love following like more of like an entrepreneurial type path, and like
Mhm.
especially my mother, sorry mom if you're listening, but like just has always been the kind of person that's like, get a job, like a stable job, and like make sure that
Mhm.
everything is stable. And I'm like, I don't fucking like doing that. It's like you,
Yeah,
like I don't like working for other people. It doesn't feel good. And for some
either.
people that's what they want. They want to follow someone
Yeah.
else, but I don't want to follow someone else. I want to lead the
Me
way kind of thing. So,
I remember telling my mom one time, I was like, Mom, I was like, you know what? I hate working 9 to 5, and I'm never, ever going to work a 9 to 5 ever again. And she was like, good luck. She's like, good luck with that, because that's not like as possible as you think. Or I don't know if that's exactly what she said, but she basically was like, good luck with that, because that's uncommon. And I was like, no, you watch me. I refuse to work a 9 to 5. And honestly, it's wild how like your words transpire, because since I've been like saying that, I actually only worked a 9 to 5 for a very like brief time in like
yeah,
the
like
last
I can't
in like
say
the
that
last
I
five
have
years. I'm like,
yeah,
no.
I can't say that I have like done more entrepreneurial stuff than working for other people's stuff at this point in my life. I have worked for longer working for other people, but it's just like it's you're and I feel like this is stuff that we're going to get deeper into. It's like when you're grown up, you're brought up in that mentality. It is so fucking hard to take that alternative path, and it might take you, like for me, it took me like almost 30 years to start following that path. Like I think probably around like age 26, 27, 28, I started going down that path, and it was hard
Yeah.
because literally nobody understood what the fuck I was talking about.
Right.
Which in itself is like really hard, because then you feel like you're on the path by yourself. But as like the internet and like online marketing kind of became more prevalent, I had a bit more of a network. So anyway, I'm kind of getting sidetracked, but basically like from being in this like position of feeling like I don't quite fit in,
Mhm.
the one person in my life that I always felt like I could relate to, that I fit in with, was my cousin V, um, who actually is the one who created the technique that we use, subconscious imprinting. Um, and I just kind of saw her like doing these things with like healing. Like I basically was like, I will be your guinea pig for acupuncture, like when she was like going through school. And
Yeah.
I'm like, stick it in the weirdest places. I don't care. Just
Love
because
it.
like just because I felt like so comfortable, like, being like in that energy with her.
Yeah.
And so I feel blessed that I knew her growing up, so that I could be introduced to, these different kinds of alternative healings. And my spiritual path is like, the story is like so much longer than this, but basically I just like hit a point in my life where I was working that job. I was like managing, and I fucking hated it. It was so stressful. I literally
Mhm.
could not sleep. Like I would sleep for like 12 hours, but wake up so exhausted still. And again, this like goes into like the niche that I now work with, but um this like affected my life in so many different ways. So I was like depressed, and I was exhausted constantly. I was like so overweight, and my relationship was shit. And so basically I felt like my whole life was like meaningless, and
Mhm.
honestly was like contemplating ending my life, which is kind of hard to admit. But that just like goes to show you the level of of healing that like working on your emotional stuff can fix. Because at that point is like when I reached out to V, and I was like, dude, like I am in a bad place. And immediately she was just like, okay, we're getting on a call. And she gave me my first sit session ever. Um, and I fucking bawled my face off. And like you, it completely changed my entire life. So I was like working at this corporate job. I was in a management position. So I was like making good money. It was stable, all that stuff that you're like supposed to want in life.
Mhm.
Um, quit my job and I was there for like 15 years too. So I was like, had like benefits and like retirement plans and all this shit. And like, obviously my parents were just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
So, did that, like moved from, or told my wife at the time that I was leaving. So basically like divorced. Um, and then moved from the city, which I was in for like 8 years, same apartment, 8 years left, and like moved to the side of the mountain, fucking basically quit my entire life and like started a new life. And like, that's kind of when I was like, I saw that they were like teaching sit and I'm like, okay, I'm in, let's do it. And it was crazy because they're like, dude, like we are teaching in Edmonton, which from where I was like a 12-hour drive. And I'm like, and you got to go every week. So I'm like, I'll do it. I'll just drive. I'll drive 12 hours there, learn the shit, drive 12 hours back.
But
And I did that. And they were just like,
wow.
okay, like you're going to commit to that. But it was just like, I knew in my heart that I needed it. And
Mhm.
yeah, like it put me on this whole new trajectory. And I realized that like, this is ultimately what I want to do in life. Like I felt so pulled in this other direction because people always tell you like, oh, like just do what you're good at and
The money
whatever.
will
Like,
do what you
well,
love and the money will come.
I mean, like there a piece of that I feel like is kind of true, but like like I'm really good at like tech stuff and computers, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so that is like the corporate job I was working and like, what I went to school for and all that kind of shit. But like there was a piece of me that always just felt kind of like I felt a little bit crushed by it.
Mhm.
It wasn't like fully lighting me up. Like, yeah, I like nerding out about it, like as a hobby, not as like my like purpose in life kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so, yeah. And so I just decided like, I want to help people. I want to help other people heal from like something that I went through. It's like if I'm like on the verge of like basically wanting to end my life, like so exhausted, shitty relationship, shitty job, like, just basically hating
Yeah.
your whole fucking life. If I can help them like pull that piece of their soul and their spirit out and just like light them up, then that's what I want to do. It just feels so much better than the alternative. And so, yeah, so that's basically how I got into all this. And I decided to like specialize in sleep because, that struggle I feel like was so long and hard for me and
Yeah.
affected me in so many different ways, negatively and then positively once I was able to resolve it. So, yeah, I'm just here to like help people sleep so they can awaken their souls.
Cool. I love that. That's so awesome. Thanks for sharing your story. I
Yeah.
love um
So, yeah,
okay.
like now that you like know about my reason why I got into my niche, I kind of already know a little bit about like why you got into your niche, but tell the people.
Oh, my niche. Um it's earlier you were saying like oh my family is kind of like what are you doing and like doesn't really like understand. I feel like that's where my family's at right now with me going towards this relationship stuff. Like they've always been like super supportive and like even with the sit stuff, they're totally like on board. But then I, kind of mentioned, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make the shift like more into relationship stuff. And they're like, whoa, 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 like what are you doing? And I was like, no, trust me, like this is where like I gotta go because like you said, like there's something about helping people heal what you've been through yourself. And like there's a lot of topics to focus on, like, a lot of popular topics, right? Like I could talk a lot about just stress, or like I could talk a lot about like anxiety, or a lot about like sciatic pain. Like, and I had sciatic pain, like, but there's a lot that I could like specialize in, but it's like I'm not like, why would I specialize in anxiety if I haven't had anxiety in like a decade? You know what I mean? Like, why,
Yeah.
why, why would I specialize in that? It's hard for me to relate to that and like be passionate about it because I'm not close to it. I'm not in it. It's hard for me to say like, this is what you would be like going through when you're in anxiety. And it's just so the reason I picked like the relationship is because when I look back on my life, that's pretty much been like the whole theme of my life is relationships with men and my whole, to me, from my point of view, the way that I see it and all the things that have come up like generationally and like with myself and my family. I feel like the theme really is like healing relationships with men, like the women healing the relationships with men. Um, so basically, I'm doing this like not just for myself, but kind of like to break this like family cycle, this family curse of like shitty relationships with men. And how to like take ownership of your own piece in it because it's so easy to be like that guy is shitty or he did this and he did that and he didn't show up and
The
all it's
blame.
so easy to put the blame and then women wonder why like the men don't show up and it's like because
Mhm.
you're blaming him all the time like for everything and it's just like a pattern that keeps on going. It's like you have like great grandparents and they're like dynamic and then that dynamic gets like passed down to like grandma and like how she chooses like her men and why she chooses like certain men and then there's like trauma there from like cheating and divorce and all that stuff and then that gets like passed passed down and I was like want to pass that down anywhere. I just want
Mhm.
to like break that cycle and I know lots of people, women, are like struggling in their relationship. They're struggling hard, especially if you grew up in a place where you had a very masculine mother figure, right?
I love
And there
that you
wasn't.
brought I love that you brought in like the generational piece too, because like
Yeah.
you're saying, like we could specialize in like whatever kind of like niche we want. And I'm sure both for both of us, it will like evolve over time as we
Oh
evolve
yeah.
too.
Yeah, of
But
course.
like, especially like for me, I do feel pulled to get into generational healing more deeply in the future. And so like that's why I also incorporate a lot of generational healing into like my current practice as well, because it's like I feel like people don't realize how much that actually affects like your current reality. It's like you're
Mm.
literally, when you are just a fucking egg in your mother's
Isn't that wild?
ovaries, you
Yeah.
are already taking on her shit. Like that is wild.
It's so wild. Honestly, like just in my like private practice, like I would say like beyond 50%. So like the majority of my clients, if I were to look back at session notes, are holding emotions for somebody else.
Yeah, that's so
And then
wild.
it's like that cycle that like keeps on keeps on coming down and the relief that people have when they know that that's not their like issue. It's just like instantaneous like relief. It's like, oh my God, hey, like that's actually not my shit. I can like let that go. Well, what a relief to know that that's not me. What a relief.
So I guess that's what sets you apart from like other relationship gurus, for lack of better words,
Yeah.
is like using more of like a generational approach.
A
A-
generational approach and a radical ownership approach, I would say.
And
Because
like, what about like because I know you talk a lot about like feminine masculine energy as well.
yeah, that's
And I
so
feel like
important.
a lot of people don't talk about that in relationships. They try to talk more about dynamic, but there's like this like
Yeah, or
deeper
even like
underlying.
even talking about like attachment styles and like and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because like hey, even when people come into the health food store, okay, and they come in, they've got all these like symptoms. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And they want to like treat their symptoms. I'm like, let's just take it a step back. And it's like, where do those symptoms come from? You know what
Mhm.
I mean? It's like where do the triggers in the relationship come from? Where do you get triggered as like into your masculine energy or vice versa? Like where is a trigger? Where do you get triggered into an attachment style? Right? So it's like about finding like the trigger, the root of that all, and then going forward. And to me, the masculine feminine energy, that's a root. If you can resolve
Right.
that and heal the feminine masculine energy in the relationship and create safety, that's to me one of the biggest roots of the relationship. Because you relationships in life has a polarity, it has a duality. So it's like if you have a masculine partner coming into the relationship, and then the other partner is like also being masculine because their fear of like not feeling like safe and having their needs met and all these kinds of things, you have two people in the relationship that are like butting heads like this now. And it can't flow. It can't be, because you can't have two masculine energies fighting for that. It's never going to work.
I like the way that you actually worded that, because I just being in like the LGBT community, I feel like a lot of people just talk like masculine has to be specifically a male man or whatever. But I feel like all of us have both feminine and masculine energies within ourselves. So it's like,
Mhm.
do you exude a little bit more feminine energy, or do you exude a little more masculine energy? And how can you like make that polarity with your partner when you're
Yeah,
being
like,
masculine or
yeah.
being feminine?
I find typically too, it doesn't matter what relationship you're in, there's usually one partner that is naturally more feminine or desires like naturally, subconsciously to be more feminine. And there's a partner that naturally or subconsciously desires to be more masculine, like energetically.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what relationship you get into, there is that. But what creates the imbalance is when the person with that natural masculine energy, that energy gets emasculated and like taken away from the person who's supposed to be like the feminine energy. And then that feminine energy is like taken away because they're trying to be masculine because they're trying to like feel safe. So, but then it creates a dynamic that doesn't work well. Like it just doesn't work.
I would love to get into this much deeper, like on another episode, because I feel like we could literally just talk for an entire episode just about that.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like we could talk about it all day long. It's interesting. It's like really simple, but it's like also really complex.
yeah, it's like pretty deep, I feel like, for most people, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
like just
I'm gonna
brushing
put
the surface. Like that's like not that's that's just
I'm
like
gonna
bringing up
put
the topic, really.
yeah, it's a whole topic of its own, but I'm gonna put a link to our email list in the description of this, just so like the people can go and subscribe so that they know like when we actually go and talk about that topic, because I do feel like that is really interesting, and I
Yeah,
know there's a lot of people out there that would be interested in that. So um yeah, so
awesome.
anyway,
Okay,
um
so
now
are you going to tell me a bit about your sleep?
yeah, I mean like this is funny because I've already I went through a beta round a couple years ago helping
Right.
people with sleep. And funny enough, I dropped off of this topic entirely because complete judgments of my own and projections of my own. But one person asked me, like, is your mission to put people to sleep? And I got so fucked up about it that I was like, no, my mission is not to put people to sleep, like spiritually. And it's kind of sad because I feel like, that's 2 years missed of like helping people actually awaken their selves. But now that I've
Mhm.
had time to reflect on it and actually just get more experience of my own with like healing this, I realized that like by helping people sleep and heal with sleep, I'm helping them awaken their soul, their being, because like I was like looking back at like the testimonials from that round, and like that's literally what people were saying, like, this
Yeah.
changed my life, like, and I'm like, okay, like this, there's something here. And so yeah, basically I would say what really sets me apart of like how I help people is like there's a lot of people out there that help with sleep in different ways. It's like, okay, like get a good mattress and a bed
Their
and
sleep hygiene and
like this kind of stuff. And like, yeah, like I touch on that. Obviously there's a component to it. There's
right.
like, I don't want to totally discount the physical components of it, because there's absolutely a big piece to that. But there's also a massive emotional, spiritual, mental component to it. Um, and that's really like what my focus is like
I
helping
would say
people.
probably like 90% of it is emotional, spiritual.
I mean, just think about like people who like lay there all night trying to fall asleep. It's like that in itself. It's like, what's going on? Is it like that you're physically uncomfortable? I would say more often than not, people are like, I can't turn off my brain. And it's like, that is something that you're holding that you
Yeah.
probably don't really realize. And people just chalk it up to being like stress or anxiety, or I'm just trying to like remember all the stuff that I have to do, blah, blah, blah. But like, it's like, it really is emotional, spiritual. And like you said earlier, like you could be holding it for somebody else. And on
Mhm.
top of that, like I said, I also teach and give the tools of like healing beyond like this one thing. And so I teach them like the how to use the tools for like generational healing, and then like whatever they might experience beyond working together. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like where I'm like trying to set it apart um from other people, and just like give people
I
the
think not a
tools.
lot of people are coming at it from like the emotional, spiritual component. And like, I've been working in natural retail, like health food stores for a long time, like almost 9 years. And I can tell you without a doubt, that is probably one of the top things in all of that time that people come in for. Our sleep section, fucking huge. It's a huge section. And people always come in, and I always like lure them away from that stuff. And I'm like, because you're not dealing with the root of the problem.
Yeah.
So like, let's look into the emotional. Let's take some adaptogens. Let's like reduce the stress component in your body. And then I always tell them, I'm like, let's look at the emotional. Like, why is it that you can't sleep?
Mm-hmm.
Because it actually be kind of harmful to take like a lot of GABA or take a lot of like sleep herbs all the time. And I know because I was there. I used to take so much GABA and so much sleep stuff because I like literally couldn't sleep after like a breakup. I had insomnia for like a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But you
And I
have to
see
do
people too
the
like using things like melatonin, like, oh, it's
oh,
natural. Like,
melatonin's the
yeah,
worst.
but you're
Don't
really
use
like
melatonin unless you're traveling. If you're traveling or you need to reset your sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm, that is the only time to use melatonin. It's hormone therapy.
yeah, like I said, like for your thing, like this is a whole topic, like, and I hope that we can have like maybe a full
Yeah,
episode
literally
about
just have
this,
a
because
episode on like melatonin. Like for real.
because it definitely has its place, but there's like so many other ways to A,
Hmm.
use it, B, to produce your own melatonin, and
Yeah,
C,
it should be
other,
like a last resort.
yeah, and other ways that you can help your body naturally. So anyway, yeah, like that's a whole topic on itself. But
Yeah.
um I guess I just kind of want to like segue into like we have just said like how important the addressing the emotional, spiritual, energetic,
Mhm.
and like you said as well, somatic, even
Yeah.
components to healing. And I think a big part of the reason why people ignore this is because A, it's so subtle, first of all. B, like we're not really taught this, like especially our generation. I feel like how many of us like grew up with like our parents teaching us like, what are you feeling inside? It was more like, shut the fuck up, go to your room.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're just learning as adults really to like tap into this.
Totally.
There are studies that have proven that your body, your heart knows that something is coming before your brain even knows.
Yeah.
And so like that just goes to show you that like the whole muscle testing thing, like I know, just like you were saying, like people do that to me too. Like, how can you muscle test me when like you're virtual? You're like on the other side of the fucking world. It's because we are energetically intertwined and our bodies know,
Mhm.
and that is, it is proven. They use it in kinesiology. They've
Mhm.
have scientific studies that your body knows. And it's like, so I was actually just watching this one guy who was talking about the study of the heart versus the brain.
Yeah.
And basically what he said is like, we concluded that the heart is connected to something, an intuition beyond what we can see,
Mhm.
feel, that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely, there's a huge
Totally.
component,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
that's what
yeah.
we try to help people tap into.
Yeah, I feel like, oh man, on that stuff, there's a whole ton of that's like a whole episode too.
Yeah.
Um, just like so many, oh, my brain just like exploded with like a gajillion like ideas on
Well,
that.
we'll talk about it. We'll talk
Yeah.
about it. I
Um,
hope that people will like, use that link that I mentioned earlier to subscribe so that they can know when we start talking about this stuff. Cause yeah, it really is deep and there's a lot to go into.
it's yeah, and it's like it's deep, but like I also want to let people know too, it's not always like scary. I think a lot of people think like, oh, coming to this kind of work always without a doubt means trauma. And people are like, nope, I already went there, or I don't want to go there, or that's all like trauma. And like, there's trauma for sure. Like, we all know that. And there's varying levels of trauma for sure.
Yeah.
But just based on like my clientele, there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have trauma. Sometimes it's just like small little events, and then the unresolved emotions came in, or they were holding emotions for somebody else. And it's just a simple matter of releasing those emotions out of the body.
Well, and trauma is like perceived, like the level of trauma is completely perceived. So it's like where one person has like maybe gone through some like physical or sexual abuse, it's like another person could literally have been told by their parents that like they're not good enough, and that could trigger something is very similar in the behavioral patterns and the way that their body is reacting. And
Yeah.
so it's like, it's like people who are brought up in like where they think they're like, I didn't have a traumatic childhood or whatever, they can
Yeah.
have just as much issues as someone who's like, I was abused and whatever growing up. So
Yeah, I know. I like
it is
always tell
interesting.
people, I'm like, you don't always think like that kind of like major trauma. Like sometimes it's just like I usually call those like little micro traumas.
Mhm.
Just like little micro traumas to the self, to the identity, to self-worth. And but they make a huge difference, like huge difference. I had actually had a client and he was so great and he was an interesting client because he knew a lot about his traumas. He had like done a lot of like work. He was all into the Joe Dispenza, all the stuff. Like he had already like done a lot of the work, but his physical body was still very stuck in pain. And it's like once we did like this kind of work, the subconscious and the muscle testing and getting into like the root of the issue, like deep, it turns out it wasn't like he thought it was we were gonna like go back to all those trauma stuff like that he already knew. And I told him, I was like, no, no, no. I was like, you know that stuff. We're going deeper. We're going to the subconscious below your awareness.
Mhm.
And that's where we're getting like the information. That's where the things are stuck. And it was wild because his body just kept recalibrating, recalibrating, recalibrating. And he was like completely free of like that pain from addressing like the small little like micro like traumas.
Right. And I just want to mention too, like the subconscious, like I feel like this is the way that I used to think about it. It's like, oh, because they say, oh, you only use like 10% of your brain or whatever that number is.
Yeah.
And so I used to think, okay, well, 80% of my brain is subconscious and 10% is conscious. But now I realize that your subconscious is basically your body. Your body is your subconscious. And I would now
That's why I
personally
usually call it like
classify
mind
my
mind
ethereal.
body. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also include my like ethereal body in the subconscious as well, but
Mhm.
But that, I guess it depends on the person. They could maybe say that that's their higher self, but to me, that's all the subconscious is like stuff that we can't like pull from our egoic brain.
Yeah.
But
I was people are like, "No, no, no." They always like tell me no. And I'm like, no, there's a difference from like your thinking, like analytical mind and your subconscious is they're very different. They're
mhm,
very different. And I always say like subconscious imprinting is like the bridge that bridges your analytical mind to your subconscious. It's the bridge. It's like there's a canyon. You're like done all the work in your like prefrontal cortex and like everything you can analyze and everything. You've done all the work there, but there's still shit. It's like sit. That's the bridge over to the, like that other side.
yeah,
Because I
and
feel
that
like
guy
without
is
it,
a perfect example.
you can't cross the canyon without the bridge. And I feel like it
Right.
really is like that.
Yeah, and that guy that you mentioned is a perfect example. It's like he knows all the things. Like he knows the things that are stored. Basically, he's saying he knows
Right.
the things that are stored in his body, but he doesn't know how
Yeah.
to release it.
Yeah.
So
All the
anyway,
things
yeah,
that
that's
he knew were not actually like what that's not actually like what came up. Like there was all these other just like
even deeper.
yeah, but like little things. Like they're little, like they're so little that you're not registering them consciously when they happen. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But in actuality, they're very deep. They're very like they're these deep wounds. They appear little, so little that you don't consciously register it,
Right.
but they're actually so deep. They affect so much and they are there. They're anchored, they're rooted there. It's about getting to like those little things too. And I find that's where people like really get that fuller sense of freedom. And even me, like that's how when I started doing this work on myself, and even now to this day, it's like when you get to like the root of like what that is, it's just like boop, you just like pop into freedom like so quickly.
That's a really good point because it's like we said earlier, that just proves that the perceived level of trauma doesn't really matter.
Yeah. It's just like if it doesn't, it just all that doesn't matter. What matters is like if you're stuck physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever, if you're stuck, you need this.
And
Like really.
trauma too, it's like, can I just for a second like redefine trauma? Because I feel like people think that like trauma means like, oh, I was weak and I like failed or something. But trauma literally is just your body's way of living and protecting you. And so you create these trauma patterns or like stored energetics because your body was literally just trying to protect you.
And
And that's
also
a
a
sign of
side note on the
strength.
trauma too is like trauma is not necessarily like the event that happened to you. It's usually like what happened after. So it's like that's why people can like work through their trauma of like the event or whatever that they consciously remember. But it's like let's work through the deeper part of the trauma of why that actually became a trauma. Were you not able to talk about it? Did you not feel safe to talk about it? Were you like violated emotionally after it? Like were you told to like suppress it? Like what happened after that event? That's what solidifies it in your subconscious, your somatic body as a trauma
Right.
from not being able to like process the event.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So, like, what is the so now like shift into like take that into like what is like the common trend or like technique that people use, let's say like in your niche for relationships? Like what do people do like now that they're like trying to resolve that maybe you agree or disagree with? Or
Hmm. That's an interesting question. I think one of the biggest things that I see is like two things. Like there's a lot of like hyper independence in like especially like in women trying to like when they're getting into relationships like I'm independent and I can do this and like I have my business and I like
right.
they're like I like this like I have everything and like I don't know and men are intimidated and it's like okay well are they intimidated or are you trying to get with a masculine energy but you're also masculine. So they're
Right.
repelled by the masculine energy that you put out there and that doesn't mean that you can't be like a boss babe in your business, but then it's like you have to reel that in when you come into the relationship because you're not going to be a boss babe in the whole everywhere. And I used to actually joke in my relationship, but we all know like jokes are not actually just jokes, like they're serious. I joke in my relationship that I wore the pants and I was super like in control of everything. And then I wonder why my partner doesn't want to be intimate with me. And I wonder why my partner like pushes me away. And it's like, yeah, because I'm repulsive. My energy, like not me, like physically, like he would always be like, I love you and I'm so attracted to you. And like, I don't get it. And I'm like, well, I don't get it either. Like, what's the problem? And then we broke up and I'm like, oh, I get it. It's like my energy was repulsive. It's a repulsive
Well,
energy.
it's like a magnet, right? It's like you got to create that polarity. The two same magnetic energies will repel, but the
Yeah.
opposite poles will attract. So, yeah,
And then
that's
the other thing, yeah, it's really interesting. The polarity, it makes such a big
actually a
difference.
quick question. Like, so yeah, so if you've got like a boss babe who's like exuding this masculine energy, like, and maybe this is like a little bit like out there for some people, but like, could you hypothetically possibly be either attracted to um maybe a lady who's more feminine, or B, maybe a man who is naturally more feminine?
Um, like, yeah, I mean, anything is possible. I think each individual is gonna know. It depends what you're looking for, right? Because I find the issue actually is that um a lot of women who are trying to like get into relationships and with a man who want the man to be a provider. They want that actually. So they're a boss babe and they're very much in control of everything, but they want to be provided for, which creates
Mm,
like this incongruency where it cannot be met. So I guess it depends what you want in a relationship, what your outcome is. If you want a man, I mean, I'll give my personal advice. It might not, or my personal opinion, it might not be popular, but I think that if you're a woman and you are going out there and you're doing all of that like stuff and you're doing like the boss babe and everything, and then you're also coming to your relationship and you're also in charge of like everything, I think that's really hard on the female nervous system. I
mm,
think it can be very like taxing. So it's like, where's your safe haven where you don't have to be all of that because it takes up a lot of energy for the nervous system to like build up all of that like masculine energy for like everything. It takes a lot.
interesting.
So
So long story short is girl boss movement is creating masculine energy in women and then not
and then they're wondering
teaching
why their
them
relationships don't
to
work out.
reel it in after they've done their fucking bossing business shit.
Yeah, and then these terms like of like misogyny get like thrown around of like men who like hate women and like being with narcissists and like all these like terms and things like start getting like thrown around and it's like, well, how come nobody talks about misandry, right? Like hatred against like men. Because it feels like
Mm,
to me like everyone's like hating on men, blaming men, it's the men's fault, all that stuff. It's like, is that actually true? Like, is that true? And like, is it actually true that men like hate the women, or do we just have a polarity issue in culture?
mhm.
So that's like kind of my point, my point on that.
Yeah, I think that's gonna ruffle a few feathers out there.
It's very uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because that means you have to take radical ownership of how you show up in the relationship.
Mhm.
And you have to take radical ownership of what you want in a relationship. Most people get into a relationship and don't even know what they want. So how can you hit your target if you don't know what you're aiming for? And then you're disappointed and angry at the other person at the end of the relationship. When you, in fact, yourself didn't even know how committed you wanted to be, didn't know if you wanted kids, didn't know if you wanted a marriage. You didn't know. You don't know what you want. You just got into a relationship and like hope for the best.
Okay, well,
So
on that note, can you give us a couple of quick tips on how to get clear on that?
yeah,
or how to like proceed forward like in that energy.
Yeah, just making a list. It sounds so simple, but like making a list of like what is it that you actually want, because that will determine the kind of relationship that you get into, right? Like you were saying earlier, like what if it was the boss babe and they wanted to be with a feminine like woman, or a
Right.
man that was like a bit more like feminine, maybe like more artistic, like, you know, but it's like if you don't know that, if you're not clear on that, how are you going to find it? So
So
just
how
sitting
do
down
you get
with
clear on
yourself.
that? Like what if someone's just sitting there being like, well, I don't know. How am I going to know?
I would say you maybe do a session on that, because it sounds like a blockage. Like
Mm,
why are you like sabotaging that? Why are you blocking that? Why are you stopping yourself from even creating a list of what you want? Because if you can't create a list of what you really truly want, that tells me, and just from my own experience, that you're not ready for a relationship. So that might be something to look deeper into, onto why you're actually not ready for a relationship. Because if you were ready, I feel like that would be very easy for you to say, like, nope, this is my list. These are my non negotiables. These are my boundaries. Because if you don't have that, if you get into a relationship with somebody, how are you going to know if they are your dream person?
I love that answer actually. And I feel like this is one of the things that I can offer to our people like that sign up to our email list in the description there is the T chart. Do you remember that T chart? It's like where
I
you're manifesting what you actually want by writing down all the things you don't want and then the things that you do want. Write yourself a letter. Anyway, it's like there's a full
Hey,
explanation to it,
I love it. Yeah,
but I can maybe like link that in like a resources page for everyone.
love it.
Because I think that could definitely help with that too. But like you said, you need to remove those blocks before you can even start to know what the heck you want.
Yeah. Because there's probably something deeper in the subconscious of lack of self-worth. That's what I that's what I like sense from that.
And speaking of blocks, there is like this kind of like trend that I've been noticing too in I'm just going to switch over to like the sleep topic here for a
Yeah,
sec
I was just gonna ask you about that.
with like all these like apps, like these sleep tracker apps and like these like devices you can like put on your head and all this crap. And this is one trend that I feel like I am so against because I'm like, you are just adding so much more fucking shit and blockage to your natural sleep. And
Yep,
like
totally.
that is a big component of like what I would like to talk more about in the future, but that I teach in my program with my clients too, is that the subtle energies of like devices and technology, they affect us. And like people do not realize that like your phone, your Wi-Fi, your like fucking Bluetooth, this shit truly affects your brain and your energy when you are like trying to go to sleep. So like all these little devices that are like trying to measure your sleep and give
Mhm.
you information about it are actually just making it worse.
Yeah.
So, but the one thing that I will say is that um there is a place for it. So for example, there are like these devices that you can put on your head when you're doing like meditation, which I feel like is something that you can do either before or after your sleep, your actual sleeping, and that will give you like a long-term effect of like actually being able to get into that mode.
Mhm. Yeah.
So not to like fully hate on that stuff, but like there's a time and place for it that I feel like I'd really love to talk more about in the future
So what
with
are your tips for someone to like to do now, like if they are like using like or have a lot of like devices, like what would you say is like a first quick thing that they can do to
number one thing is get off your damn phone at least 30 minutes prior to going to sleep, and remove it from your room. Do not
Yeah.
keep your phone, your TV, whatever in your room. And especially this blew my fucking mind when I met this guy. He told me that the Wi-Fi router for his entire house was in his bedroom closet, and he's like, I couldn't sleep. I'm like, get that shit out of there. I
Yeah.
personally, for my family, I set our settings on our Wi-Fi to completely turn off in our main sleeping hours. Just fucking unplug your Wi-Fi at night. You don't need it. What the fuck do you need it for? You're sleeping.
Yeah.
So like I would say like that's my number one advice is get your devices, especially your connected devices, out of your room.
Yeah. It's good
And there's
advice.
also like a subconscious component to it as well. It's like if you have your phone, let's say like next to your bed, and like and this is also a common argument that people will give me is like, well, I need to know like if there's an emergency or whatever. Well, that's not to say that like you can't have it outside the room. Like even if you just leave it in the hallway, leave the ringer on. There's like we are blessed with technology in the sense that like you can set up your phone in a way that like only important phone calls will come through. So like you put it in do not disturb mode for
Yeah.
sleeping time, and then literally only the people who are like, let's say you have a daughter who's like pregnant and you want to be there when she goes to the hospital, you can
Mhm.
put her number as like the emergency list, and her number will be the only one that will come through when you're in that mode. So it's like little things like that you can adjust, that like you don't have to worry so much that you're going to miss a
Mhm.
call. But then you're taking that subconscious piece out of your sleep routine where it's like your subconscious mind will be anticipating some sort of notification or call or whatever it is when you have that device right next to you, because it knows that. It's like your body knows that. So
Yeah.
anyway, I could like literally talk about this for an hour.
That's such a good thing. I've started like putting my phone on like do not disturb, like even before I make it to like upstairs to my bedroom. Like I'll try to like put it on at like 9 o'clock at night. And I'm just like, hey, like no more looking,
And
no more nothing, no more contacts, like nothing.
yeah.
Like I'm
And
out
and
at night.
and once you start like doing this consistently, you will notice like let's say you do this for 2 weeks and then spend one night where you are on your phone until like right before you go to bed. I guarantee you will notice a massive difference, because like there's a few things, right? Like there's like the things you can't see, which is like the waves and the connected
Right.
whatever Wi-Fi's. and then there's the blue light. It's like even if you have a blue light filter on your screen, it's still you're
So,
still
and
getting
the
the blue light.
content you're looking at is like stimulating your brain. And then you go
Exactly.
to bed and your brain's like, it's weird.
Exactly.
It makes
Yes.
you tired. Your eyes like get tired. And you're like, hey, I'm ready for bed. But your brain is like, no, just kidding. Like, we're stimulated. Like, where's the
Yeah.
party? Where's the party at? Like,
And it's like those things are made to stimulate your brain. Like they fucking pay science teams millions of dollars a year to make sure that you stay on that app longer. So, anyway,
yeah.
it can be as simple as like, I mean, 30 minutes is nothing. Like you can burn 30 minutes like nothing. Read 2 pages in a book, talk to your partner, fucking sip a tea, like
You know what?
whatever.
The other night, I literally just sat on my bed. I had a tea and I just like turned off all the stimulation. I had no music. And I wasn't meditating or anything. I just like sat there for literally like 30 minutes and I was just quiet.
Yeah,
Cause I'm
I
like,
mean,
I
that's
just need like
awesome.
the quiet because it's always a stimulation. Like my mom and I, we love music. We always have it on. And like I always have music on in my car. And then I work at a really busy place. So I'm always like talking to people. And like it's a lot of like stimulation like all the time. And I'm like, I don't need to like
Mhm.
be stimulated right until the moment that I go to bed. Like even
Yeah.
reading, it's like I can allow my brain to just like be quiet.
I think
It's
it's a bit of an addiction in this day and age. Like people are a little
totally
bit
is.
addicted to feeling stimulated. Otherwise, they say, I'm bored. Well, you can like and Joe Dispenza does talk about this in one of his books. It's like you can literally just, if you have a fireplace, even an electric fireplace, or even like that rock salt lamp you have behind you,
Yeah.
it's like you can take a glowing type of like image like that and just stare at it for like 10-20 minutes, and that will like put you in a meditative state without having to like and that
Yeah,
can relax you.
on a side note, what I was gonna say, so people like are saying they're bored. It's like, are you bored or are you avoiding something in your life? Because I can guarantee you, you're saying you're bored. You probably have dishes you could do. You probably have laundry you could do. You probably have like some sort of thing that you could do to make your life feel like good and like
Yeah.
peaceful and like, probably like little tasks that could like get done, but you're not doing
Mm-hmm.
them because you want that like stimulus hit from your phone or from whatever so that you can keep like escaping your life.
It's definitely a coping mechanism for a lot of people. I am aware that I've used that often as well when I'm
Me too,
triggered.
yeah.
And like, I know that we can talk a lot about this on the relationship side, because I definitely go there when I'm like feeling uncomfortable in relational type things. But
Mm-hmm.
it can also be like, just like when there's an overstimulation in the environment, I'll just be like, hey, I need to escape. But just like the awareness of like recognizing that you're doing that alone can help you like shift this. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, it's like how much more time are you going to free up in your life to do things that are going to make your life exponentially better, even if it's 30 minutes?
And
That's
even
like
like, even
3
if I
hours
have
a
to do
week.
even if I have to do a task, like this isn't like on sleep per se, but like let's just say it's like the morning and it's like, okay, I have to do like 3 tasks. I will literally leave my phone upstairs, or if I have to bring it downstairs, I'll put it on airplane mode for that time. And then I just get it done so fast. If I don't put that on, I do the task and then I look at my phone. And then that task that was like an hour becomes like 2.5 hours. And I'm like, okay, like not, and then you feel kind of like crappy and you feel like you're not getting things done. And when I put it away, I'm like, oh, okay. Like it was like, it's just done now.
Yeah, and then like the
Really
speed at which you can get things done, you'll be fucking amazed. You'll be like, oh shit,
phenomenal.
now I
Yeah.
have extra time that I can scroll if I really want to. But
Yeah, then you could like choose to like scroll, but it's like putting it away. And I find like if you're doing that during the day too, like where you're finding moments where you actually like put it away and you don't do it, you're not constantly stimulated by your phone. I feel like that would definitely like help you sleep like at night too. Just like less stimulation like throughout the day.
yeah, there was like a point that I know that you wanted to talk about today, which was like grounding. And like this kind of leads me to that. It's like like when you're not on that, I feel like personally that devices do make me feel a lot less grounded. But
Yeah.
like when you have a moment to like disconnect, and like whether it's like go outside or like meditate or like whatever it is that does ground you. And there's like here's another tip too for like light sleepers. Like you can literally take a wire, put it in the ground, run it into your room, and like put it on your bed, and you will sleep like a fucking baby, because that grounding is, it
Yeah.
removes like inflammation, it removes like this extra energy
I
that
sleep
you've.
with a grounding mat and a
You sleep with
grounding
the
pillow.
grounding mat?
Yeah. I used to
Yeah.
have like a grounding sheets, but my ex got that in the divorce. So
Man.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's like amazing what what effects can that like literally nature can have on your overall well-being.
Yeah. Or just
Probably
like
your
my
relationships
favorite
too.
thing too is like, especially like in the winter, sometimes it's hard to go outside like barefoot and like get grounded, like connected to the earth that way. I'll just like go out and like hug a tree. I'll just like hug it. I'll put my cheek on it and I hug it. And I
Mm.
just like, I talk to it. And I just like feel so good after. And I don't care if anyone thinks I'm a wackadoodle. I really don't care.
Yeah, I've done that a
It
couple
feels
times
so
too,
good.
and people looked at me like I was really weird, but yeah,
Just
trees
invite them
are.
in. Next time they look you over, be like, hey, you want to come hug a tree with me? Oh,
So
they're gonna think you're
healing.
extra weird, or they're gonna be like, oh, thanks, good thing she invited me.
Yeah, I'm literally now a tree hugger. You don't
That's
have to be a hippie to be a tree hugger.
That's
You
right.
just got to be human.
That's right. Yeah, I love it. Hey.
Well,
Mhm.
I just want to say thanks to anyone who actually watched and listened to us to the end here, because
Yeah,
we
me
did
too.
cover a lot, but
Yes.
our time's kind of running out. So I think we could definitely dive into some of this stuff a bit deeper in some of the coming episodes. So
Yeah.
if you are still listening here at the end, use the link in the description here and you can sign up for our email list, and we will let you know when we have a new episode. And
And any other
also
new
when we have
exciting
some of
things.
our freebies and offers and stuff like that. Like I got a lot of stuff that I just want to give to people,
Mhm.
and that's a great way to deliver it. So yeah, what you
Great.
got for the peeps?
Uh, I don't have anything yet, but I'm working on some things just because this whole like relationship piece is new to my practice. I've been focusing a lot before on like physical illness with people, so I'm kind of like making a transition. So
Sweet.
yeah, stay tuned for some cool stuff on that coming up.
Awesome.
Yeah.